So welcome. I guess this is our first, big meeting with Simone Collins.
Official kickoff.
The official kickoff. Thank you. So I am just going to actually turn it over to the four of you to start the meeting.
Great. Well, thank you everyone for having us here. We'll kind of go through introductions as we go through the presentation, but tonight's presentation kind of will follow what we intend to go over with the public. Some things we'll go over a little quicker since we kind of met before and you all are fairly familiar with what we're covering. And we'll be making some tweaks as we go forward. We're going to get some good pictures of the parks and really get them on the cover screen and things like that. Next. So tonight, again, just kind of going through introductions. And you'll kind of see how we roll that out to the public. And then Anita will pick up and go over public presentation update, just kind of give you a status, the feedback that you shared with us in terms of key persons, stakeholders, and then also the survey. And then Michelle's going to take us through kind of a photo tour of the various parks. And that's really more to kind of give you an idea of what we'll go over with the public on the various parks. We'll probably kind of just for sake of time, go through those kind of quickly, but any feedback you have, that's great. And then we'll dive into the brainstorming session, which we figured about 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes, depending on how many ideas we generate. And then we'll go over next steps moving forward. So, again, thank you all for volunteering your time as part of the study committee. We like to share the committee list with the public as well, so they feel like there's someone on the committee they can reach out to in a personal way to kind of share ideas. We just like to get your names out there in front of everybody. In terms of our team, I believe you've met Bill Collins. He's serving as quality control principal on the project. I'm myself, Sarah Lieber, serving as principal. Anita Nardone, you've met, is serving as our project manager, and then Michelle Armour, I don't believe all of you have met her, but she'll be serving as our staff landscape architect. And then Jessie Buckner, we're getting her online. She'll show up probably at the next committee meeting with lots of good information, but she's serving as our ecologist. So we'll give the public a little background about Simone Collins. This is a slide we always like to kind of present to kind of show our philosophy as a firm. We don't need to go over this in depth, but we'll spend a little time on it with the public. But really kind of looking at how we carry all of these philosophies into our designs and into our master planning. Hopefully that'll come through as we go through the process with you. In terms of our firm, we've been around for 34 years now, since 1990. We've worked on multiple projects throughout the state with a focus on parks, open space, and trails. So that's really our specialty. Bill and Pete Collins, the principals, which I guess I should add myself in there at this point, but they have combined 47 years of experience. And then also we've obtained multiple design awards throughout our process that we're proud of the work we do, and we like that. It's always good to get recognition. We like to kind of always set out why we plan. A lot of times that question will come up at the end of the process. Well, why are we doing this plan? Where is it going to go? Planning, I think as you all understand, it really is important. It allows you to address your current needs and your future growth as a community. When it comes to parks and trails and open space, we want to make sure that, all areas of your parks and open space are accessible to all abilities and all types of people throughout your community. So I think that's really a focus of planning these days, is just making sure there's equity within our systems. And then also just looking at what parks can offer. They offer so many green, essential infrastructure to our communities that aren't just physical, but also offer kind of that emotional, spiritual, and physical health benefits as well. So making sure that we convey that message, like that's, these are the things we're trying to offer in these plans that we move forward. They make your parks make your community attractive to new businesses and new residents. Most public people, the one time that they'll interact with their municipal government will be through parks and rec. We're going to have the most interaction in that community. So it's really important to make sure that it's a good face that you're putting forward in your parks. And then also just as a planning tool, we're looking at 10 to 20 years vision for these parks as we kind of move forward. So we also kind of like to just, again, talk about what a master plan is and what the process is. Obviously, we're at that master plan level on the upper tier. It's the second step. There was an initial idea that the borough identified that, hey, we have these parks, we should be forward thinking and come up with plans for them. So the next plan is to go after the master plan. So if you drop down to that bottom tier, these are kind of the steps of that master plan. So we're in the process of collecting all our data, starting kind of brainstorming with you all. And then we'll kind of get into site analysis where we really look at how these sites are being used, what are the physical conditions on these sites, and then kind of start to develop that site program. So that site program will be a combination of combining the analysis and all the ideas that we've heard through both the committee and the public. We'll come back with preliminary concepts, and we'll vet those with the committee. We'll also kind of vet those with some of the focus group meetings, depending on where they fall. And then we'll move forward to a draft plan. That draft plan will be presented to the public and the committee. I think we're also presenting it to the planning commission. And there will be a review period for that draft plan. And then once everyone's kind of on board, the idea is that the plan gets approved. Master plans are not legally binding documents. The approval just says, we all agree that we came to a consensus and we want to move forward on this. It doesn't hold anybody legally bound to act on it. So once you have an approved plan, then you look to secure funding. So what that plan really becomes is a tool so that you can go after grants from Department of Natural Resources and Conservation or Department of Economic Development, and really kind of secure that funding and then go into design and engineering and construction. And in most projects, there'll be multiple phases, right? You're not going to complete some projects or some parks in one phase. You might have 2 or 3 phases. So kind of the master plan will identify an idea of how that phase might work, but a lot of times it might kind of be a shopping list. And if a funder comes forward and says, I want to build a new bandstand pavilion, then you kind of say, okay, let's go. So that phasing is always a little flexible, right? And the most important part of this master plan is the public outreach and getting that input. So we're just kind of listing here all those ways we're reaching out to the public, and we'll go over that a little bit tonight as the committee. But just making sure that we're creating a space where everyone's heard and we are their ideas. So this is that kind of same little process I spoke through, but in schedule format. We have made 2 revisions to the schedule since we last issued it. One was kind of pushing back that first public meeting to the end of May, just to give a little more time to get the word out, kind of aligns with our birthday as kind of a launch of the project. And then with that, looking at rescheduling the second committee meeting, we originally looked at dates in July, but then we thought it just made sense to hold it on your June. It made sense to hold it on your July committee date. So if that's good with everybody, I don't know if we want to pause and just confirm that that works for everybody.
I think that would be good if we could, because that's all new to some. We discussed it again in the hopes of giving the township the chance to, advertise as much as possible, get it in there. So the changes from what we've seen before are the first public meeting, May 29th. And then again, we looked at study committee number 2. We need, 3 to 4 weeks to develop some draft concepts. So that put us at the end of June. And then, Sarah said, well, if it's a regular committee meeting in July, does that make sense? Alan seemed to think so, but I would love the committee to finalize the schedule that works. And knowing it's the summer, right? We're sort of up against vacations, but discussion of thoughts on that.
We were normally going to meet on that date anyway, so the question is that 2-week differential between when it was originally discussed and now, does it make that much of a difference from anyone's perspective? I'm fine.
It's not for me.
It's for me.
May 29th.
No, the July 10th.
This would be our meeting after the public meeting.
And the agenda that you all have, I did put this revised schedule on the back. So if you're okay with it, then that will be our final one. We'll take away the word draft.
Because we did discuss before, we will have a July Parks and Rec meeting.
Correct.
To give us that larger window,
Okay, that's great.
which is, you have 7 to 9, right? 7 to 8:30.
7 to 8:30 is fine.
Yeah, so if it goes over, good.
Okay.
Have a Parks and Rec
or draft off, that's
We're set.
set.
Okay. So the other thing we want to kind of present tonight, and we also think it's important to kind of present this to the public. And this is the vision statement that kind of came from the RFP and the proposal that we submitted. And I'll just read this because I think sometimes it's important to hear these things out loud. Narberth Borough envisions a Narberth Parks plan that strengthens the Narberth community, provides quality experiences for residents and all park users, and promotes active living, recreation opportunities, climate resiliency, and environmental health and sustainability for all 3 priority park sites. So this is kind of our starting point. I think, there's opportunities as we get to an actual final plan where this can be wordsmithed. But we just wanted to get it in front of you and kind of have everyone just maybe at your next meeting, you guys think about this a little bit and think if there's anything that needs to be added. Michelle pointed out tonight, maybe we need to be more specific about the 3 park sites, since this is something that kind of could stand on its own potentially in the future. So we just want to kind of put that out tonight. If anyone has any thoughts on whether or not this has already been explored and this is the vision, or if there might be a little thought that needs to be given to it moving forward.
I like your suggestion about naming the sites only because if we call them 3 priority park sites, we're gonna get.
Yeah. I just got there with you. So we can make that revision for the public meeting just so that we kind of anticipate that input.
Is the reason why you have for residents and all park users the recognition that it's used by more than just Narberth?
I think so, and I think that came through in the RFP. That was something that was emphasized in the RFP.
My memory is correct. The Parks and Rec board approved the official name for was it Elmwood something?
Elm Grove.
Elm Grove, okay. So
And
that's like-
Saturday is the
Is
day.
that
official
2
thing.
words or 1 word?
I'm not sure.
2 words.
It is 2 words, okay. So, and it's Elm Grove. Okay. So I think we've had that captured everywhere, but if anyone sees a stray Elmwood, let us know. We'll definitely make sure we're double checking things. Okay. So with that, I'm gonna pass off to Anita to kind of take us through some of the public process.
Well, there it is, and we'll be sending it along to you again. We just sent the committee the digital form of the public opinion survey. You'll also get to see the parks plan flyer, and this is what we're hoping you'll use for Narberth Day, right? So we have up in the upper left corner, the QR code announcing the 29th, the first public meeting, and then in the bottom right, the link to the survey. So if you use it tonight and check it out, it'll say the survey is closed because we'll open it, of course, on Saturday. But anyway, what we decided to ask you to do as part of your homework, and you'll see the homework list at the end of the presentation, is to give all of your comments on the flyer to Rebecca. I'm going to say the same thing about the survey as well, and then she can relay it to us. So we'll get it. We're asking for it by Thursday night so that we can make it final. And Michelle has offered to blow it up onto a big board. We could do it a 2x3 size if that's helpful to put it at a table. I'm not quite sure what she wants for Narberth Day, but we'll get to that at the end of the meeting. But we got some nice feedback last week on the graphics, and this is how we had responded. So that's our flyer. That kicks us off. We're official. Thanks, Michelle.
Yeah, both those QR codes will take you to like a splash page that allows you to share, like at the bottom of that page, you can then share it with whoever adds your calendar. So it gives you a kind of a way to pass on information.
First item on our public participation, and to emphasize what Sarah said, boy, this is such a key. And having joined this firm 3 years ago and seen different projects, it's just so much, it's my favorite part, actually, of the whole process. And we have a very robust, program for public participation. We decided on 12 key person interviews, 3 stakeholder meetings, right? public opinion survey. Of course, the public meetings is also the other way as well. But you did great work. I think we asked you to look at this at your last meeting in June, and I'm sorry, in April, and you came up with this list. So we have a list here, and we're saying 12 is what we had sort of scoped, but we had kind of looked at your list and kind of organized it into what we think makes the most sense. And we probably need to get a little bit more detail from you folks on that. Some, of course, are wonderful standalone groups. The first column, absolutely. The second column, we're sort of at the point where, especially number 14, 13 and 14 and 15. Maybe these are meetings where that one person could be rolled into something else. We're talking about the past mayor. I think that was on your list. The other one was the other councils or the other council members, the other commissions or committees. There's 11, I think, in the borough, right? And then some of the other council members. Don't know if there's some way we can think about really the fact that you are the committee members, that those folks could contact you and you could provide the feedback or whatever. So our thought was that the way we have listed them, we feel that the first 12 certainly are great, and that there's certainly another way of dealing with it. The past mayor, the councils, the committees, the other council members. And then this last one, the Amtrak SEPTA planning. And SEPTA is part of a large amount of conversations we have, because Simone Collins does a lot of transportation planning. So we certainly know a lot of the staff at SEPTA. But Bill might be able to talk to this a little bit more as well, because there was already quite a few conversations. I think we're Amtrak and SEPTA were in the same room. And maybe that is something that can be further discussed as we talk about the Could you have been on that?
During the Station Square planning project, we had meetings together. So that was very productive. And then for the grant applications, SEPTA wrote letters to support grant applications. Multimodal was through and federal grant, Chinatown got all of them. So what happens now is Norbert, after this project gets kicked off, the multimodal project is going to come up. We have to talk about how you best use those funds to do what you think is best around Station Square. And I think it's somewhat flexible. But the coordination between Amtrak and SEPTA is transportation specific. The park elements of Station Square can be planned knowing that the work that was done in the Station Square really pushed the envelope on ramps, underpass, those things. So our suggestion is not engage Amtrak and SEPTA during the park project unless you want to combine with something else. It doesn't combine easily. Or have it under the
Decision we could talk about again, but not really. The only thing we did want to talk about really on this list was the skate park user. And that's, we were thinking, how hard that might be actually just to, sure, I don't think there's a group who knows. Is that something that really people who are interested will come and give us their feedback at the meeting? Well, they see some things. If there's any input on who is someone like Dave, that's great.
I think when we've done skate park keepers interviews in the past, if there is, if there is kind of a local leader that's kind of been in charge of overseeing the skate park, that they might be able to volunteer maybe 3 active kids or something like that.
Yeah.
So I'm a teacher at Lower Marion High School. My wife's a teacher at Harrod High School. You can certainly put the word out. You might be able to put something in with weekly updates. I know it's going to be in when that's going to be in June.
Yeah, but I think the goal is to have maybe one adult leader that then kind of these are 4 kids that you should interview. So that otherwise it's going to be 20 kids volunteer, and that's getting into the realm of a focus group and not a keeper interview.
At a meeting last fall, we had a parent come that was interested in doing clinics here, which never came to fruition, but he stays here with his kids and his kids' friends. And
That would be the
he
perfect
seemed,
time.
he seemed to know everyone.
Yeah.
So I will introduce,
Yeah, I guess I look like the champion.
I have his contact information, so you should like me.
Absolutely, and
Yeah.
thank you, Dennis, for sending the annual park user list.
And just a quick aside, have you ever worked with Tony Hawk's Foundation in other communities for funding and planning assistance for permanent skate parks?
We can look into that. We haven't worked with the foundation specifically, and we have worked on other state
Big,
parks, yeah.
big skate park that we worked on, South Bend, they worked directly with local foundation.
Got it.
There was a young man who had a business in skateboarding. And he was so capable, he was negotiating with the borough leaders for the skaters. And I don't know if he's mayor yet, but he was like on that track. So whether it's a young person or a parent, the person that you want to be able to talk to and rely on, that's the person.
And then I'm also blanking on his name, but we've worked with, Scoopville River Development Corporation, and one of their employees he is a professional skateboarder, so he is connected that way. And they did that, I don't know if you've been to DuPont Crescent, but he basically built that little skate park under Racecourse Bridge, just as kind of a little side project. So I think, there's definitely resources that we can look into, trying to distribute them and not like buy, through.
Can I ask why are we calling out that one specific type of activity in the park and not like also a few kids that do the basketball courts or a few kids that are playing
So this was
softball?
given
No,
to a.
yeah, no, I understand. I was
Okay.
asking more broader, why?
Because basketball court's not going anywhere. It could move, change places, but
Right,
that's not going anywhere. And we know that seniors want pickleball. I mean, that's a given too.
there's plenty of, I play pickleball all the time. There's plenty of pickleball courts around here.
Okay, but skate parks take more to
Uh-huh.
put in, and you have to get community buy-in from everyone to get a permanent skate.
Well, that was
It's a lot more heavy lifting.
Yeah.
right.
So you can't just put it anywhere, but the park's always gonna have basketball, and it's always gonna have some type of perhaps paddle sport. But skateboarding, that's still like for lack of a better word, a minority sport, as in participation, right? It's not a
Right.
main, it's not
Well,
a.
that would be actually, that's,
You know what I mean? It's not a mainstream sport.
Horse, I do think it's putting the cart before the horse, because it may very well be that there are a lot of people that want there to be tennis courts and or pickleball courts.
Sure.
That was a big kerfuffle when that changed and put in so.
yeah, if it's, we're gonna make a decision on the broader community needs, it would seem like if that's such a small portion, and I'm not saying we shouldn't have a skating or skateboard park, but if it's such a small portion of people,
But, I use incorrect words. I mean, it's not a mainstream sport, so
okay,
let,
that's different.
but it's still, there's more. The kids that are into it are vocal and passionate, as we know from past meetings,
Right,
but we just know you can't get rid of the basketball courts, right?
I think the reason
So-
it needs to be addressed is because it's a pilot.
Yeah,
And there's a question mark around the future of it, whether it's going to become permanent, whether it's going to be resized or.
See like how, people are using it, how frequently.
I think there was an outreach at one point to say people would send in their comments to the borough, emails or something.
yeah, when it was initially,
But I
when
don't,
they rolled out the pilot, they sent out a survey just to get initial feedback, but it's not an ongoing survey.
right, no, I agree. It's not an ongoing survey and you do see people use it. You do see kids on bikes in there. You see little kids on scooters in there. I mean, I'm not going to say it's crowded, but it's used.
it's used every day, that it's not raining or snowing,
All right.
and some days it's more crowded than others.
I feel like it's used quite a bit and a lot of age ranges. And, yeah, I don't know who the person was that started that whole thing, but there is somebody behind creating the skate park.
I would put you all in touch with them.
Okay.
You're all
Because I
questions.
put-
You know, Dylan, who donated the equipment?
He was the one who contacted the company and
Okay.
had, at the time, he was 12, so he might be 13 or 14 now. He said he had a great future in President or a great used car salesman. He convinced them to give it to us, so I'll put you in touch with him, because he has a great pool and just sets.
So maybe kind of your contact and that contact together, and then they can kind
I'm
of.
sure they know each other.
Yeah.
I'm sure they've
Yeah.
worked together.
Yeah, but it's used a lot, in my opinion. I think it's.
I think to your point, when you think about organized sports, there's a reason why skate parks are popular, is because there is not an organized sport, so it tends to appeal to kids that aren't of that team mentality, right? Which I probably call like halfway between team and
Right.
non-team mentality. So I think in that regard, because we do have the focus group meeting that reaches out to the organized sports, this kind of picks up that missing piece where this is a very active use of the park that doesn't fall under that organized sports umbrella.
Because quite honestly, Rebecca, to pick up on what Sarah said, as I looked at the list and as I look at what the next list for the stakeholders, the more focused groups, everything about the park, this park, is represented, right? So that.
And that's what's missing.
Right, yeah, exactly. So it does seem to make sense. Again, not saying that it's going to remain in the exact same form and everything else is discussed. So.
Oh, can I ask one other question? Because I think, when y'all get the plans put together, you'll be sending them to the mayor for review and for review. So I was just wondering could you send that to SEPTA as well, just to get whatever they're already familiar with? I mean, obviously not all the parts, but just the draft version. If we're not gonna be having kind of like conversation with them upfront, just wanna make sure they're aware. And also I think, Jeff, how much of that area do they accept?
We only own the park,
Okay.
so.
So everything under the awning is SEPTA.
7 days.
Just from making sure that, they're, have laying eyes on it and also they own kind of be part of that land and just make sure.
Sure, the thing is, two of the four parks, but the Amtrak is right.
Yeah.
So two, but Amtrak. One is directly adjacent to seven. So, I think we want to be careful about what we give them, just what they need. Okay, so it's a good idea.
Yeah.
To reach out early and let them know this is moving ahead from last phase.
Yeah, and just because I know I heard informally from folks that SEPTA, not related to this, but some frustration when folks do things adjacent to their property and they don't hear about it till later in the game type thing. So that's why I wanted to just make sure that we were hitting them up earlier in the process so they're aware.
Yeah, and if we really, because typically we meet with the planning commission once we have like Mount Co planning, once we have kind of a draft plan to kind of go over that with them, so that potentially are two that we can join together. We really felt it was important to have a meeting with Amtrak and SEPTA. We could kind of join that with planning, because I think that's how we did it last time, actually, and we have
Yeah,
three people on the
Jordan
table.
Bolton used to be the planner.
So that might be a way where we can kind of have that
Yes, yes.
face-to-face interaction.
She wrote
I just want to make sure that we do consider the borough committees, subcommittees. We are capturing the Shade Tree Commission in kind of that first meeting with all the kind of environmental, I don't know if the EAC should be listed there as well. If there's any other committees that would pair nicely with some of these. Areas.
Where does the borough planning commission?
So we actually meet with them once we have a draft plan, present to them the draft plan. If we could also, I'm sorry, I should call this, is there an official borough planner? Or is it just the committee?
So whether the borough has a contract with the Montgomery planning commission.
Okay, so that would be the meeting.
But the borough planning commission acts very much independently.
Yeah, so that is that schedules in between the draft plan and the final plan. So we present to them in October and I believe the final plan is November.
Anywhere you still, no, I'm actually off the planning commission after 20 years on and I feel like I have invested interest.
So is your question, how can we consolidate these, or where can we consolidate?
I guess if we don't have them listed, the actual borough committees, if you think there are important borough committees that you don't see up there that need to be, because there's 11, I forget what all of them are, and I apologize that we didn't list them all. But it was kind of just lit at the end of your list, kind of how do we reach out to borough committees.
Historical, although many, I'm sorry.
Council, I'm on the council infrastructure committee, so I don't know that we,
Okay, that's redundant.
I can.
Got it.
I think that EAP is probably the most important.
Exactly, I think so, and I think, right, it makes sense right up here in Route 1.
Okay, that's great.
And
Can I just, the regular Parks and Rec committee, I ran into a member of that and they were concerned that they don't feel connected to what we're doing here. Do you think there is a value in inviting some of them, maybe maybe at the reunion, one of those to, or invite, just some way for them to feel more connected to what's happening with this, because it's Parks and Rec is the name of the committee.
This is a public meeting, they can also attend
That's really,
all of these.
they could come on the 10th.
So
July.
actually, that's an action item, is I will send all the members the notes, right, and then the schedule.
Yeah,
Say, please feel free
just
to
something
attend.
for them to be able to feel connected to this, since,
Definitely.
they are Parks and Rec.
They should be coming, they should be coming already.
Borough council, I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, you know, you can reach out to your fellow council members, make sure they know, as you will, when all these different meetings are. So, I mean, I think that's the goal, is to get as many people paying attention,
Yes.
be involved early on, so that we don't waste our time to come up with something and everybody goes, oh my God, what are they doing? You know, I mean, you know, they may say that anyway, but at least maybe if they're informed that early on, it won't be quite as a surprise, but I don't know what more you can do. You can't have a committee of.
I think all of you are so, we were kind of feeling, you are all so connected and bringing information back to your various things that I felt very comfortable that they were part of that process, but look at it, if there's something you'd like to add in there, certainly shall. And I was in touch with Alan, I know you're on it, and we will get together, I'm starting my master list. And I have to tell you how enjoyable it is to start to at least get to know Narberth from, diving into the website and reading the history stuff. It's very exciting. So starting to learn.
The need is out in Chester County, and most people in Chester County don't know where Narberth is. I worked there for 35 years, and they would say, I was trying to find that. I said, we don't tell it.
It's a need to know basis. It's a need to know basis.
That's right.
I did have one other thought about the list of stakeholders. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Alan.
So I think we should probably at least talk to the sports organizations like the Narberth Athletic Association and the basketball leagues, just because I feel that if we don't talk to them, they're going to be offended that they weren't involved in the process. And I feel like they might have good feedback for us on how we can better maybe improve facilities that exist or add new facilities. So I mean, I think we still need to at least talk to them and have a conversation.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Totally, in fact, did the slide just change? We've actually lumped them all into the first most major focus group or stakeholder. All of the annual park users, all of the established athletic associations, right? That's going to be a great month. That's going to be a wealth of information. So they are not key person interviews. They are stakeholders. They are users. They are much more focused discussion about what their needs are and what they want. So thank you for that.
Yeah, because I was looking at the list and I was like, wait a second, I don't see them listed. And I was like, oh yeah, that's right. They're
And
stakeholders.
I think we kind of swapped some of the stakeholder meetings and key persons where we thought they made more sense. So we did switch a few.
Okay. All right, perfect.
Glad you asked that because I was looking for those words too.
Yeah. Yeah. What would athletic associations have to say about park this? Number two was the schools, which was great. I think Sarah had said initially when we met with you, parents and children, great focus for parks and harbors. So this was the list that you guys had supplied us, the elementaries and the middle schools in St. Margaret's. Is there more private schools that should be added to that? We don't know. It's something we can, decide. That's obviously an easy thing to add. The third one is a little trickier. Neighborhoods adjacent to the park. Those folks, of course, are going to have many more different concerns than maybe other residents, right, of the harbor. Hard to do unless we are supplied their addresses and we reach out to them, right, and invite them to come to a meeting. Otherwise, they are free to come just like the rest of the public would. Unless, there's places I have worked where there's a lot of homeowners associations. So when we said neighborhoods near parks or trails, we actually knew and had contact with homeowners associations. So not quite as easy in Narberth. And I just wanted to see if you wanted to expand on that, and if you thought that this was an important voice to be heard. Because obviously, parks can be loud, and sure there are people around there who want to let you know about that. Right?
And we can advertise it at the public meeting and let it be self-selecting, right? And if someone thinks they're a neighbor of the park, they can come to that focus group. What we would want to avoid is someone who's with a sports league coming to that, like, well, I want to talk about what's happening in the park versus, so that's where it gets a little tricky how you advertise that neighbors meeting. Because you don't want someone to feel like they're a neighbor, but they weren't on the list, right?
Definitely something that's just like a flyer that goes out, and I could literally just walk the block, and it's not a huge, municipality. You could just like walk and drop it off.
And is that a value to you as a committee, to us as
Are
designers?
you thinking the streets that face the park? So Windsor Ave residents,
Windsor and Conway.
hang up in Conway, and then Elmwood residents.
Right, yeah. We
And
could
how about
also
the apartments
include
across
the folks that are south, right, south of the park where the creek actually goes.
Yeah.
So that they would be considered those neighbors as well. Because downstream will be important in that.
And I think what we could do on the flyers, we can say, if you have a neighbor that didn't receive a flyer, but feels like they should be included, please share the information. And that way it's that way you don't have the Facebook page or something where a neighbor's like, did you hear about this? And all of a sudden 50 people are like, I didn't hear about that. That kind of gives them a way to share it within the circle appropriately.
And then also, what about businesses around Station Circle? I mean, like, do businesses get,
Business.
oh, they're on there. Oh, that's right, I'm sorry, that's a given.
Unless we think it's more specific to Station Circle. But they're gonna have very different, probably conversations than the residents would.
Right.
So maybe in the business association,
Yeah.
key person interview, we just want to make sure we're capturing those businesses.
Right. We also talked about, a specific public meeting for Station Circle, Town Square. And I don't know if this is picking up, Bill, on the past committee that had worked on that project to sort of add.
I think it was really important last time.
Yeah, I think so. And it's hard to imagine doing this effort and not pulling that in.
Right, and there'll be, what we haven't seen yet. We've gotten plans for the new tier. So taking a look at those, looking at Station Square like that, something brand new.
So I guess the question here is we've identified 4 meetings. We have 3 that we're holding. So is there one that can be covered in a public meeting? Is there, because we will cover all these topics in public meetings. The key here is, do we need to give space for people to talk outside of a public meeting where there's a little more comfort in how you're talking about things, right?
I mean, looking at the list, like number 3 definitely jumps out as the one that is tertiary to those. I think there's like 1, 2, and 4 are like the primary. So maybe there's a way we can include that, the number 3.
Just make sure that they definitely, we're able to get this flyer to those neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's a very personal touch, Gene, is to actually put a flyer in.
Yeah, that would be easy to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great.
I would like to ask David a little question, for everybody on council. The committee has been active with this since Station Square planning. Would it be recomposing the same people, new people? I think that's something that you have to think about. Who would represent the community there?
Yeah, and that's a good question. Is this gonna be a public meeting where we just invite anybody and everybody, we're just gonna focus on Town Square Station Circle? Or is it gonna be specifically with a curated group of people that are
It
invited?
would be valuable to this curator. Because he's going to come up in public meetings as well.
I would think so. I'm not sure it's our call. I would guess council needs to. So
Yeah, I
have
think,
some kind of say on how it's gonna be reconstituted. I think obviously you need some institutional memory on how we got to where it is, but, and I know, those of us who were on it want to remain up. But again, I'm not sure it's our call.
Is that just, so the previous committee was made up of planning commission members and members?
it's Dave, Jim, and Jim. Jim Cornwall, Jim Spear, and Dave. Did there,
Everybody's still active, those 3 people.
Yes,
Yeah.
You could get a lot done if you trust those 3 people to give us feedback. Then we have something more to bring to the public.
Yeah, my record, I'm trying to find the RFP draft that we approved at council, but I think I'll try to confirm this, but I think it spoke about reactivating
It did.
the existing group.
right.
And then I'm pretty sure it said that if there's additional folks needed, that this body is empowered to add, and obviously council is as well. Let me see, because I think we've thought about that, and I'm pretty sure that that was the process that we outlined.
So I just wanted to make sure, because I think we're talking about a key person interview with committee and then an actual public stakeholder meeting. What are people,
Yeah.
I guess, what are people, because up there it says public meeting, right? That would be dedicated to Station Square. Is that what you guys are envisioning, or are you envisioning just talking to the committee?
Can you go back then? So one of the 12 interviews was also with.
Well, no, I'm
Oh,
just
okay.
pointing out that I heard 2 different pieces of information just now.
I think Well, my opinion is, I think it's key to include the public, because
Yeah.
that's the center of the downtown. There's gonna be so many stakeholders that are adjacent to the issues here.
And not only that, I mean, the original visioning meetings were a series of public meetings where there was a lot of public participation and buy-in. I think if you want to get back again, you have to have this, there'll be something with the public.
Yeah.
The meeting would be good, but as your planner, I would value the advice. Smaller.
I agree with that.
Yeah, I think that was the conception, was both that they would help us as institutional knowledge and planners guide that process and help us with that public meeting, and that was going to be a kind of like forward, I mean.
And that's why we always invite you here to this meeting, so that.
And maybe that's what we do, maybe the July meeting, you bring everybody, right? Jim, yourself, and.
Yeah, Jim is usually different.
Yeah, Jim.
Although we have big
Right, yeah.
Oh, okay, that's fine.
We could always share any concepts we have at that point. And then
That's the
set
same
up
one I,
times to
at
meet.
least I didn't see it.
So we'll figure out how to get that input in without taking up, key.
And if you would, please advise the committee people, and also go ahead and.
Great. Next item, a survey. I previously sent out a draft survey to all of you in the link that you could actually get in there and try it. Probably without saying that this was, we knew how long that was. You know, it was 61 questions. It was long. It had so much stuff. I hear somebody thinking. So anyway, we were very delighted to have the input of Michael and Jean and Rebecca and Alan late last week, trying to give us some ideas on how they would like to see some of the visions made. So we really did appreciate that time. And so what you're seeing, you'll see it in your inbox, and what you see is the printed copy here, and you can certainly take the time this evening or through the rest of the week to critique and to give your comments. And we're asking, like the flyer, if those comments can come to Rebecca. So what we'd like to do is just have one document that we can work on, because we're kind of under the gun, which I think is a great thing, because we want it done, right, for our birthday.
You like being under the gun.
Everyone loves those deadlines, right? For sure. It is, and I have to say, what I noticed from the first 61 to what, Sarah, who has had such great experience. Again, a pulse of what people are envisioning without it being a vote. If it was a vote, right, if we were just gonna say 7 people want pickleball, right, you wouldn't need anybody to interpret that, right, and give you something beautifully. You just go out and bill whatever was the total bill getter. So understanding that concept of taking a pulse of the community and yet not pigeonholing them, which was a great concept that Michael gave, more open-ended questions. So Michael, you'll see, a lot of just write, took them right in there and put them. However, from experience, we know that many times people don't take the time to do any free-form questions. So we tried to balance it, Michael, with some questions that we did actually have to pick things, so that for people who aren't going to give you some of their creative and passionate input, we still are trying to capture some of that stuff. Certainly added the issue about the question about race that you would ask me, which was great, and then brought it down, right? So I think we went from 61 to like
37.
Yeah.
Which technically is a little shorter because we have logic in there that if you're a Narberth resident, you get one set, and then if you're not, you get the other. So it's a little shorter, it's not 30.
One of the things that we did take out, we had sections on bicycling and pedestrian usage, which I think that's a no-brainer. We certainly know the high interest in that. We took out information on things you want to do in Lower Merion, Haverford. We have listings in the park, so you can tell us if there's certain parks that you want to go to. So we're trying to thin that down. So that's the kinds of revisions that you'll see from 61. And I think, Sarah, when you looked at it, it's like 15 minutes down to, I thought,
It's sweet around 20, depending on, I think, you know, it overcompensates when it does the prediction. I mean, it said 70% completion rate, which is actually a really high completion rate. But it was a little longer since there are so many open-ended questions. So I think it was like 20, 23 minutes would be the average time.
and one of the things we wanted to talk to you folks about, is just a couple things so I don't forget. Yeah, if they go to the QR code, we'll see that the survey will be live on the 4th. So again, all of your input, we're happy to make that, you know, up until Thursday night and we can get that to you. But the other option for the committees and also Park and Rec Commission is that we can share with you a link where you, as committee folks, can go into SurveyMonkey and read those open-ended questions. So you
In
can
live
kind of
time.
see it in live time. And, you know, we are gathering it all, but you'll be able to see who did fill out those boxes, who wanted to give you that creative, passionate response. So I think that was a great thing Sarah reminded me. We can share that with you. It's one more thing, you know, of course, we can look at, but in real time, you can get a link that says, okay, 12 new people responded. And you can just go in and just sort of look at question number 12 and see what they said. So
I would like to not share that at public level, just because we do like to go through and redact any offensive language that might come through on the survey before it goes to public. So that would just be something shared within.
yeah, just
So I have on this, I scheduled to send you comments by 3 p.m. on Thursday.
that'd be great.
So but that means that if you want to comment, you have to send me your comments by 1 p.m. So that will give me a few hours to just look through and get in touch with anyone in case there's conflicts and wants to see the comments more.
1 p.m. is Thursday.
Yes, if I don't hear from you, I'm going to assume you have no comments.
Thank you for being so responsive to the feedback and I've already like kind of gone through the survey and overall, I think it's like really good.
Well, I give all the credit to Sarah. She is a guru. But I love the graphic image too. That's certainly helpful. That was Michael's idea. It's important for the space. So
I stole that from a completely different planning.
Oh,
thing. So I want to take credit for something that wasn't
take
mine.
credit.
My SurveyMonkey only lets you compare 2 images, so I had to do a little custom image. But I'm gonna recommend to them that they allow you to put more than 1 image. So that's like a multiple choice, but no, I think that was a good idea.
Kind of interesting.
Some of the specifics or like.
Yeah, so we did go into, I think as we move forward, we do have we get more into the park, the specific questions for the park.
Right. I'm sorry. What was your question?
No, I just had some comments on this particular question.
Oh, sure.
So if we want to keep going, right? Yeah, it might pop up on the next.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Great. Right, so the preliminary survey goals, of course, and Michael reiterated, you know, vision, value, and needs. So the feedback we got, like shorten it, provide broader questions for an overall vision for the parks and open space system. Focus on needs that are not currently being met. Where are people having problems not being able to recreate or recharge like they'd like to? And adding more open-ended responses to create some brainstorming. So I'm sure there's passionate people here. So we're saying we're going to make those revisions by the 3rd, which is Friday. So I appreciate the Thursday date. Gina, I'm sorry, say it again. Was there a specific question?
Yeah.
So we showed the question starting at Narberth Park. So if you had anything before that you wanted to comment on.
It was actually a question 12. So I didn't know that we. Oh, wait, was that? No, not a question. Different than the one. I was looking at the online one.
Oh, because you were taking it and changing the numbers.
Oh,
Do you remember what the question was about?
It was about the nearby parks.
Yeah,
Oh,
that
here it is,
question.
14? Yeah. I was just wondering, like, what makes you live there? Is it just adjacent?
So we started off with all the Narberth parks. And then we included Narberth Brook just because it is an open space within the borough.
Private property.
And then Short Ridge is directly adjacent.
Probably should take out the.
Yeah, Narberth Park is private property, so it shouldn't even, it's not even supposed to be included in any of the MS fours, for example, because it's all the work we do in that part. I'm a resident, we do it itself, we fund it.
Yeah, and we're happy to take it off, but this
Yeah,
question
I
is
just don't
more to
want it to get
understand
confusing.
what types of places people
Okay, well,
want, but
the
I think.
reason why it should be included, and I'm sorry to take over our line, is that we don't wanna promote the idea that it is public.
That's.
We don't mind visitors, but
They like to keep it private over there.
no, we don't like to keep,
They're
people.
special.
They're special.
No, it's just people assume it's not, and they act differently if they don't know.
Yeah.
And like, for example, the people that take their dogs off a leash, it's like, that's just disrespectful.
Yeah, and that's kind of a carryover.
People do stuff like that all the time.
So let's just take it off.
I do think,
Let's take it off.
I do think it being in there would give a misleading.
Yes.
impression
Yeah.
that-
Misleads them that it's borough property.
Yeah, it does.
Understood, so we'll remove it.
Thank you.
To answer your question, though, a lot of times we'll put outside parks because we want to know very specifically.
Oh, yeah.
Walk
No, I
right
agree,
there,
yeah.
right? So, but
So I was like wondering, like, should General Wayne Park be there just because it is pretty close, it's literally right across the arena. That's something,
He's that.
yeah. And I know a lot of Narberth residents go over there and just because I have some amenities that Narberth.
and that's the other thing is we see lots of that.
Right.
We go over and look and see, what is it though that?
What I would like, what I think is, there's a lot of people think that they live in Narberth that don't live in Narberth.
Good point.
So I think it would be worthwhile, I know we don't want to have people give their names and their exact address, but I think if we could get the street you live on would be helpful in discerning whether someone is in Narberth or not in Narberth. And that might be of benefit to council, but it's gonna have to make the financial decisions, and, what parks do we fund and how do we fund them? I think that having the street, what street do you live on? I'm asking for an address. To me, I think that is a worthwhile thing.
We could easily add that in the Narberth residents
I'm not
breakdown.
sure everybody agrees, so I
But
don't
if
know.
people agree, I'm just saying that would be where we would add it, so it's not a general demographic, it's that more specific demographic.
I mean, if you look at the use of our parks, there's an awful lot of people that don't live in the borough that use our parks, which is a good thing. But it is gonna be the borough that's gonna have to be paying for whatever modifications, changes are in the parks, borough residents, so I think it's worthwhile information to know.
And how many people end up not living in Narberth, but think they do? Because if you put it under 5, or you're a resident of Narberth Borough, and only the people that say yes to that, what street do you live on? It'll be interesting.
I mean, is it easier to the zip codes? Is that the confusion, the post office
No.
bans both municipalities? Okay.
I think these other boundaries are actually confusing.
Well, my only concern with doing the street name is we have boundary roads like Haverford Ave, Montgomery Avenue, so people might live on the other side of those streets.
Well, that's why I'm trying to limit it,
Yeah.
if you say the specific address, then you know for certain. And I don't think people want to go that far in requiring people to, I personally don't think it's my own view is, if somebody has some comments about the park, I'm not sure why you need to be.
My question is, at this stage, do you think that even if they live on the other side of Haverford Avenue, is their input going to influence the project that much financially? Meaning like, Does that matter that much at this level? I don't know.
I don't know, I don't, you know, if.
I mean, it's because we're having all the, stakeholders and person of interest interviews. Those are, but when we think with tease out whether they're residents or not, for a general survey, I don't know if it's that important. But I mean, it wouldn't hurt, it's not gonna hurt anything to get that information, but
That's how I look at it. It's not gonna hurt anybody. But I don't know if it's gonna help anybody. But as you said, I mean, if we went in one direction and most of the people who wanted that were outside of part of the borough, it might make a difference. I don't think it will. I don't think it's gonna drive that much of a decision. But it's not gonna hurt.
Those people who weren't aware that they actually
That's why
pay
it's not
taxes.
gonna hurt. It's-
No, I don't think it's the parents. The parents would know, but if the survey is gonna include kids under 17, I'll bet easily there are many kids who think they live in the borough.
Well, we
And,
can easily look at adult responses versus kids' responses. What the address isn't gonna let you do, since it's an open-ended comment, someone's gonna have to dig through 700 surveys and determine who lives where.
And that's not a good use of whoever gets lucky to do that.
I think the majority of people are going to know whether they're a resident or not. I'm sure there'll be a small portion that isn't 100% sure, but does it really matter that much? Probably not. I mean, as long as, you know what I mean? I don't know. To your point, I think it doesn't really make sense to have what street you live on. Just let them answer, are they a resident or not? Because it's most of the people are going to know whether they're a resident, I would assume. I mean, I don't know.
You could use the adults, because that's going to be statistical for the responders. And then compare it to under 18. And just see if there's a difference, but rely on the adult. Then you're not asking people to give your address, which is.
maybe for all, I should have said, are you sure?
Please check your most recent tax.
That's not a,
Questions that people to be.
We just have to make sure the roads are clearly labeled.
We collect your trash.
There's.
Right.
Is that?
Is it the big red
That
truck?
is, it couldn't be more clear.
Okay.
It's just a joke that all of us know. It couldn't be more clear.
Put your dot on the map.
That's right.
To remove snow removal.
All right, so we decided we will. Yeah. And
Did
then,
we decide we wanted to ask the street address?
I think the consensus is
no,
no.
Yeah.
Not unless it would be an easy way of doing nothing, and it doesn't sound like it would be, so what about?
thank you. Thanks for that feedback. All right, next one, Michelle. You gotta get your brains moving. These are some of the questions.
Yeah, so we did kind of start here at the Narberth Park Visioning. I think just to make sure we keep this meeting going a little bit, we have time for brainstorming. Unless people want to kind of go through questions specifically currently, or if we think it's more valuable, maybe move on.
Yeah, thank you. Well, welcome, Heather, to this great. Michael, you'll recognize the pictures. One issue that I think might be worth explaining, I think previous survey, we talked about daylighting stream. I think that goes to another thing. I don't think people quite understand what that means. So we'll get better at that. I think that daylighting is, that if you wouldn't, you're not sort of in that world of understanding. Certain things. All right, Michelle, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Right, so, you explained to me, and so we're gonna go through, some images.
Just speak up a little bit.
Oh, sure, sorry about that. So we're gonna, go through some images of, from our site for the other day.
To load. read, is it in this? No, it's on the computer.
Oh, it's right here.
Yeah. So it's lost.
Yeah.
So, on our site tour, we visited Narberth Park, and then we walked, across, or under the bridge on the wood, to Elm Grove Park. And then we walked over to Station Square from the, back side, the southern side of the tracks. I will see them. So here's an aerial image of Narberth Park. And this is the image that we will be using on the survey as well. We removed topographical information, topo lines, just for the sake of not distracting folks with extra information. But so this is Narberth Park, as you all know. And we started, we looked over the skate park with basketball, former tennis courts, the pavilion and lawn area next to the library, the playgrounds. We looked at surfacing, we looked at circulation to and from, which I think is the next slide. So walkways, which are pretty limited within the park, right? And we looked at circulation outside or around the perimeter of the park, outside of the bounds as well, sidewalks, which tend to be about 5 feet wide. I think it's what we measures. And we also discussed the stream, which of course has been rooted underground, and we looked at the off-site condition of the stream just across Virginia. And of course, the sports fields. We walked over to the Veterans Memorial and took a look around and discussed, with the volunteers who keep up with it, and did find that people do use this space. We looked at Haverford Ave, as well as the Amtrak right of way, and we also found this really interesting sculpture here that's up on the hill in the right of way, and no one on the visit really knew its origin. And there was discussion about what happens, depending on how plans go, finding out, I guess, more things.
Right. Should it be relocated onto the borough property, things like that,
So where exactly is this?
So when you're right at the intersection, you know how there's those little bluestone steps that lead up to the underpass sidewalk?
Yeah.
It's along those.
Oh, yes,
bluestone-
I've seen that, yeah.
So it's literally, if you're here on Stack Waywood, it would be to your left.
Yeah.
Tucked in vegetation.
Yeah.
On the Amtrak property.
It's on Amtrak?
Yeah.
Probably is gonna be interesting.
So we don't own it. right?
Yeah, well, the memorial is done by the, I mean, you maintain it, correct?
Power wash.
Amtrak thanks you.
And it's dedicated to, I mean, do you know any history?
Yeah.
No, I assume that NICE put it out at some point, probably without any permission from anybody.
And he was the gentleman that did the garden along.
Yeah, Jeff Leister, yeah, but that's just a guess.
Yeah,
It's been up as long as I've known, and I've been here for 40 years.
So we walked on from there to the intersection of North Waywood.
I think one of the interesting things, Michelle, is that the actual mainline greenway is Haverford and across to the Penn Win, right? So that's an important consideration here. So that is on those county maps and it's part of.
yeah, so we talked about maybe connection improvements across there.
Of course, we moved on to walking through the bridge or underneath the overpass, which is not an experience. And then over to Elm Grove Park. So this is just a view of the street frontage of the park on Wood Avenue. And you can see there's been a lot of work. Well, we should note that there's been a lot of work on removing invasives from the site, establishing lawn, but this isn't to say that it has to remain, right? And you can also see from the photos that there's some pretty nice topographical change there that almost separates the lower, if you want to slide back to the next slide, the lower portion of the park by the stream from the road. So even though it's on a pretty major road, once you get downhill, it feels a little protected. So that's something to consider here. And of course, the stream, which, you know, we discussed that it, you know, we've discussed possibilities of restoring the stream bank. What does that look like? Is it on both sides? Is there interaction with the water? All things to explore. And then the bridge, the pedestrian bridge.
Yeah, and they shared with, I guess, the borough has done initial concepts for a replacement of the walls at the end of this, because they're gaining walls that reached the end of their life. That's what you're seeing in the upper right. So one of the key person interviews we identified was Pinoni, your borough engineer. You kind of talked to them about that project, any other projects they've been collaborating with on that kind of interactive park system. So that would be the MS4 plans. So we'll definitely get more information out here, but I think there's a lot of possibilities at the end of this road here to kind of really create more of a park feel.
I think there was a little bit of discussion about the possibility of moving pavement from the end of the road here as well. Really coming to the bridge.
Does anybody know if that bridge replacement has been studied for control of the vehicular bridge?
No, they do not want to make.
It was, for
No, I live on that street now.
Yeah.
there is, I don't think it's any appetite at all.
Yeah.
Maybe I open again.
No, and I can say that the pedestrian bridge itself is on our council 5-year capital improvement plan. So I think the idea is making that a safe pedestrian.
Yeah.
So I think there's been preliminary engineering on, you know, establishing banks and the new bridge, pedestrian bridge. But we did ask that if there was any desire for vehicular access there, even emergency, and it was kind of, the consensus was no.
Getting the North Avenue Bridge done. We've come a long way to stop that.
And so here we get to Town Square, Blue Station. And here we came through from the backside where we saw this beautiful pollinator garden, saw that there was a sign up for volunteerism, right? It's great to see, beautiful arrival point, and then coming through the tunnel, as we all know, does serve as an obstacle to accessibility. And then out into the square itself. This brainstorming.
Why don't you take a seat so you can have yeah, so, and we'll fix the fonts for the public meeting. I think we forgot to, I think your computer had different fonts. Yeah, we'll make sure that we think that. But so we're gonna kind of take you through the brainstorming card technique. This is what we like to use with the public. And so what we start to do is categorize ideas, right, as we kind of hear them. So looking at goals, these could be initially broad, they might get more specific. So what goals you might have for the park, such as ADA access or combined facilities for all ages. Looking at facts, I mean, you guys know these sites way better than we will ever know them because you've used them, you've recreated at them. So any facts you kind of have about site conditions, partners, existing facilities. And then really getting into the bulk of the brainstorming is ideas for, you know, attaining those project goals. So some of them might be like upgrading basketball courts. Maybe there's need for a new playground. So we can kind of flip to the next slide. So as we hear these ideas, we'll start to put them up on the wall and fit them into these initial categories. So we kind of just threw out some examples here of what we think might be kind of looking at the goals and facts that we've kind of gathered to date, and then concepts, take some shots at a few concepts, and then also we always like to kind of think about partners too, right? You'll see on here in pink the 50-foot tall water slide. We always like to use that as an example because, you know, Rebecca might say, hey, I want a 50-foot tall water slide in Elm Grove Park. And our initial reaction might be, that's kind of a crazy idea. But we still put up on the wall, right? That's what was said. We want to honor that. Maybe what that leads to is she really wants kids to be able to interact with water. So maybe it becomes that safe interaction with the creek. How do we get kids down to play with the water? So all ideas will eventually lead to a consensus good idea, right? So we'll kind of open up. Michelle and Anita are going to diligently write down. But I think what we'll do for this, if it's just a general idea, we'll just keep it up as a general idea. If it's park specific, we can put like an NP for Narberth, EP for Elm Grove, and then ST, I guess, for Station Square. S. Thank you. I was like SQ. But yeah, if anyone wants to head off, we can dive into any category. We might get a little fumble on the wall. We'll always reorganize them kind of as we take notes. So
Would you like to do first overall and then do specific parts? Does that work?
just if someone just wants to take a go and start giving ideas, and we'll get the ideas flowing.
A question.
Yes.
You mentioned daylighting, but what would be the environmental implications of that? Because wouldn't it put more storm runoff into the creek that, because right now it's protected and no like nothing from the park and the grass and human litter, et cetera, gets into the creek.
So it is getting into the creek because it's going into a drain going directly into that pipe.
From which,
right.
Well, are you
So
talking
we'll
about?
Study where there are inlets in the park, right? We'll do a little analysis on that.
Oh, okay.
Where it's going directly into the pipe. Because so one of the advantages to daylighting is you would have a buffer to that stream if we were going to daylight it. So those would filter out any nutrients, undesirable material within that stream buffer. So when we talk about daylighting a stream, it's not a little idea. It's a really big idea that would drastically change Narberth Park. Because it's going to take up space. And then the feasibility of the daylighting has to be explored just from a water volume point of view, right? Because
if it floods, like it sometimes does up and downstream, then it will affect the use of the park.
Narberth Park is downstream, right? I can't even imagine where it flows. It flows towards.
So-
Yes, so it goes
from
down.
Northside to Elm Grove and then out to Lower. Yeah, so it flows down. And correct me if I'm wrong here, Anita, but the common consensus would be that daylighting it would create more volume than any pipe that's underneath the surface. Is that not? Okay, so volume might not be, and the benefit is of daylighting it is when you have a controlled pipe where that outfall takes place is where you're going to have scour and erosion, and then that creates more impacts downstream, right? So that's kind of the benefit of daylight.
So would it be possible potentially to daylight part of it then? So that would be more control, potentially less effect downstream.
But you're absolutely right, Dennis. I mean, the concept of daylighting, pipes provide what we call inlet control, right? So if that water volume can't fit in the pipe, it's going to flood upstream. So if daylight, it has the ability to spread out. So those are the kinds of studies, and they're very, I would say simple, but they're standard kinds of hydraulic studies that can look at exactly how that would look at that place as you do the drainage areas.
So Narberth itself is kind of daylight. So
Ours is 100% daylighted from the top, like about 100 feet from Price. It opens up and then it's daylighted all the way till it goes under Windsor.
Yeah.
And then
But the difference is it is channelized.
it is.
So that is very much like a pipe, but it just has no top.
We could talk about this for hours, but real quick, we have natural walls that we got from France in partnership with Lower Rhine Conservancy to reinforce all of the banks to the culvert where we accept water from Darwin Lane. All their storm runoff comes to us. And then we have cement walls from that culvert where we take in Darwin Lane's runoff to Windsor. And we're responsible for those walls, even though we're taking runoff from outside of our private property. it's a big mess, right? Because those walls need to be redone, but the natural walls are in good shape because we maintain those and we have plantings that are appropriate for it.
And maybe we should get some images of
Anyway, that's a whole other
those
discussion.
stabilized plantings so that people understand what a naturalized layout looks like. Do you have, would you be able to share images of those stabilized plantings or direct us to a point to take pictures of it?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I can ask you for information to help out for Almond Grove.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that is definitely something that has been discussed because, a quick aside.
And one of the.
People that are involved in volunteering at Elm Grove are should in our.
And one of the things with, we should point out as a fact with Elmwood or Elm Grove is that the ownership of the creek is down the middle, right? So you have a private landowner on one side, the public park on the other. So, we should keep that in mind. I think it doesn't prohibit, naturalization of the banks, but it does require partnership.
Would daylighting affect Amtrak? At some point, it has to now come back in.
So when you think about daylighting, Elmwood Grove, Elm Grove Park is already daylighted, but it's ancient daylighting, it's changed. So if you relax the slopes, you took away the hard structures, replaced them with planting, you're slowing down the water because you have more volume. So whatever shoots through under Amtrak right away comes out, slows down. When you talk to your engineer, which we did during the grant applications, Narberth has almost no places to satisfy its NS4 requirements. So looking at your park this way is a new way of trying to do two things, right? So it doesn't always have to be daylighting. There can be subsurface storage as well, which come in different shapes. But it's basically offline, generally of the alignment of the street, where when water comes up and fill up its reservoir, and then release. There's all kinds of treatments that could happen. First one, daylighting means let's look at opening that up, creating more volume, slowing the water down, satisfying our sport plans, and what would be the physical impacts to Narberth Park and the program that you want in the future. What space is that going to take? Which you might have to trade off some.
It's essentially going to cut a line right through the middle of the field.
Right.
In general, yes.
A lot. More than, playground, court area. I mean, it's, It's not like we want to go back to that mass.
You got it, that right. It's about 17. It's
Yeah.
And when it drops to the Amtrak side.
Possibilities.
I mean, there's a lot of stormwater management techniques that we consider for that whole area, whether it's bioswale or.
So here's your stream coming through here, right here. So it basically kind of wants to go
Straight.
that way, yeah.
Wouldn't we figure that out first?
Well, that'll be what the ecologist is kind of looking at with us. We'll look at drainage patterns. So I think in terms of the concept, do you want it?
Well, that's what I mean. We need to know we want it first, because if we decide we want that changes completely
So,
the rest of the park plan.
yeah, when we go into the initial concept, we might look at a concept that shows the daylighting, and we might look at a concept that doesn't show daylighting, so that you can kind of look at how that balances. And so when you look at this park, you have all this pavement on one side with your courts, your parking, then you have the buried stream, and then you have your open fields, right? It's a very kind of segregated park. But that might evolve. Yeah.
Could you, if the effect what in terms of daylighting, using Elm Grove Park.
That's,
Yes, you can do a combination, but, you have in between it a controlled culvert, right? But can be done in combination, that gets into real engineering. And in Elm Grove Park, the surface elevation drops more quickly, right? So maybe a series of tiers. There's all kinds of treatments that can be done to address volume, velocity, water quality. Those are the three things that you want to address in stormwater management.
And let me just ask real quick, since it's come up, is everyone aware of what MS4 is? Because it
I
was.
wrote that down to look at later.
Yeah. It's, so the state requires us to meet certain pollution reduction benchmarks, right? If you've seen those bump outs that we have a couple of, that it's part of that plan. We're slated to have 19 more of those bump outs.
Really?
There's a, yes, so there are significant requirements that the Barra. Where, Jeff, what year are we technically supposed to?
5 seconds, yeah, like 5 years.
How many do we have so far?
well, but that's just probably one element.
That's just
Yeah. So the 4 S's are sewer,
Municipal, separate,
system, okay, thank you.
separate meaning. You know, the city of Philadelphia, there's combined sewer systems, right? So we're talking about separate storm, separate sanitary. We're even talking about specific stormwater and.
So when we're thinking about MS4 in terms of Narberth Park, you know, this park has no stormwater controls in it. It just has inlets, right? And those just drain directly into the creek. So when talking about volume control and rate control, implementing modern BMPs that might be subsurface would go a long way to kind of addressing some of the volume in that stream.
And Benoni did make us aware that there is a plan for a rain garden type of structure in Narberth Park. So that's obviously a huge thing. We'll talk about it.
That's why it's really valuable to, when we meet with Benoni for a couple of reasons, specifically stormwater. And Eric and I and his stormwater person met during the grant applications because Station Square identified possible places for rain gardens and planting, tree plantings that could be combined with stormwater. So your entire drainage system drains through that park.
Yeah.
And so the more you can do upstream, couple the BMPs, management practices, the better. Your engineers would have a global view of where trying to go.
And I think one of the things that will be valuable in us looking at the plans of the park, because I think maybe, if I'm correct, that rain garden is identified for the area of the lawn, for the pavilion, which obviously we don't want a rain garden there, right? So kind of looking at how can we get a rain garden to that park and not take up the only kind of open space play area within the park, that's unstructured. So I think, you know, there's a lot that we need to kind of explore when it comes to stormwater and just kind of meeting those requirements.
Is there a time frame, Mike, in terms of how quickly we have to act with regard to these requirements?
There is, I can tell you that we are not on schedule to meet them, but I know from Eric at Benoni that he's not aware of any municipality that is on schedule to meet them either. And so I think the thinking is, and no one has said that they've heard this explicitly from the state, but I think that the thinking is that as long as we're showing good faith effort to implement the plan, the hope is that they're not going to come down hard on us and everyone else that's committed in this new market, because it's a significant investment infrastructure dollars and we're a really small municipality.
They might, so they ask you to meet all these requirements, but they don't give you any money.
Just for confirmation, this could potentially comply with what they're asking for too, or doing rated gardens and stormwater management.
It would, yeah.
Absolutely, it's part
So-
of it, and you can match different kinds of monies. So if you, sometimes transportation, that's recreation, DCR, can fund portions of that. DCD can do that. And the National Fish and Wildlife, which are downstream neighbors already got. Those are things that can be cobbled together in a smart project. So that's good. Those are things you want to think about when you're considering your options.
If there's one town that's on track.
Sorry, who's on track?
Around us on every side.
And another point to kind of piggyback on what Bill just said is that there are some sources of funding that will maybe only fund park improvements, right, recreational improvements. So a recreational improvement can also at the same time address stormwater management, you're kind of getting it cheaper.
We sometimes they can match, like we did one in Solway Township, which there was 4 grants matching each other. And it was stormwater, transportation, recreation, and conservation. That's where you want to try.
It's the goal. Yeah. Bring you some.
I think the public really has to be informed on this. It's going to impact our thinking process with regard to the parks.
Yeah, and when we go through the park tour, we can kind of talk a little bit more about what daylighting is when we get to that slide and kind of get a little more public input to that, because you're right, it's a very valuable, takes a lot of education and kind of tying in that idea of the MS4 as well.
And you give up a lot, right? So I think very specifically, I'm looking ahead at this educational slides and examples of daylighting so people can kind of get that.
Yeah.
I think that would be a very good idea, to have some way to vision it for people, because just describing it doesn't help, I don't think, especially if it means a huge chunk of the existing park. Just show people what that might be.
If the description is you lose your baseball, football field, that might be. Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right.
That's why the alternative concepts.
So we might want, I mean, again, with the public, the first public meeting, we want to be very open and not kind of say, well, we're gonna look at daylighting. So we might hold off that explanation until we get to.
Draft concepts,
Yeah.
right? Okay. If we show you, the committee, some concepts, you can say, no. We already know this is something, right? We're not sure this, but we're gonna give you enough options so you can physically kind of get an idea. And there certainly is enough data between Benoni out there to give you an understanding of what a width and a potential stream bank could look like and what that, how much real estate you can get.
And how you could integrate that into a park in a nice way.
Yeah, I mean, I was just picturing some, like a nice stepping stone path across it where children can go and learn about habitat around the streets. There really are cool ways to incorporate stormwater management.
Yeah, I think tactically from the first meeting, maybe we just focus on stream bank restoration with Elm Grove. And that starts to get good idea. We don't need a channel like this. We can relax that channel. Just introduce them.
But then what do we do on the private resident side? If we do something that requires ongoing maintenance, for example, that we do our part with our own monies, of course.
So there's probably going to be some kind of incentive, whether it's carrot and stick, for, you know, the way it goes through the property downstream, a little like that. Water wants to move to the parks in general. So, but it's a question of whether the residents are going to fix their own side of the wall when the time comes.
Because they're responsible for that, so it's that whole.
It's on their property.
Yeah.
So could there be a project that solves that future problem for them. Well, that's where you want to.
Got it. Okay. It's good to know, thanks.
And I think in our Karen, just in case folks are listening online, I don't want anyone online, I don't want them to come away with the idea that there's a plan to blow a hole in the middle of the park. Right now, we're gonna be out there tomorrow.
Oh, God.
Tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's been put on the wall.
Well, that would be one way to get the residents.
100% public engagement, yeah.
It's a good point, and if you don't talk about all the ideas now, you never will. So
Yes.
now's the time.
Yeah.
You were saying something about, I don't know if it's a treatment or whatever, but something about stepping stones and water. Is that, what is that?
So I think when you
That
look
sounds
at like
interesting to me.
nature-based play, there's ways that you can create safe opportunities for kids to interact with small streams, right?
Yeah.
So I think what Michelle was thinking of is just like stones that are close enough that a kid can kind of walk around, maybe it's a big flat stone right at the water's edge at a key place. So that you kind of encourage kids that are able to kind of walk down those steps to get there. And it doesn't like everything. Sometimes people get nervous about playing in water,
I think
but
that's super cool.
I
I mean,
think-
whatever that.
yeah.
There's one example that I
They have that, Shortridge has that.
Yes, they do.
And so does,
Yeah, and it's really great.
that other
For
park,
kids.
We have it too.
Yeah,
But
yeah. that-
trying to get it in
Yes.
multiple places in our street.
right. Yeah, which is really great. I really like.
And from a liability point of view, it's not a playground, right?
No.
It's called natural habitat
Right.
restoration.
Right,
So kids will play in it,
right,
but you don't have to worry about your insurance carrier being like, you're encouraging
Being
kids to go down.
right.
And that's how a lot of nature-based play elements are covered is the log in a
Yeah,
wood chip area is considered habitat.
right,
It's not a play structure.
Right.
So that's kind of from a liability point of view.
I see a lot of value, and I'm sure it's already in the conversation, especially with Elm Grove Park, is having native plantings. Looking for like rain gardens and anything that's gonna be naturalized. And I know spending a lot of time in state parks and state game lands and all those things, you'll see these plaques that show the species that you have in the area for education purposes. They're really nice.
I like that.
Really cool.
yeah.
On a completely different track, and I don't know if it's concepts or goals. But I've been rereading my Jane Jacobs and she talks about, uses activating park spaces at different times of day and different kinds of behaviors. And one of the things that buzzed in my head was, and I, not the full-blown deck on the side, which Dave can speak to why that ended up not being feasible, I guess, a decade ago. But trying to take up that concept and see if there's ways to implement that idea that doesn't involve like pylons in the ground. And that was basically, you know, if I would call it a cafe space, some sort of space where folks can meet, sit, whether there's small scale kind of like coffee concessions at certain points of year.
So you think Station Square.
Well, both Station Square, and also this was specific for the park.
This was adjacent to the library. I think the cost was what blew everybody away
Yeah.
when it got, you know, everyone was just sort of like,
There was the concept of building a deck.
well, it was a raised terrace. Alongside the Girl Scout room,
Gotcha,
you know, that overlooked
Alongside
the
the-
playground.
gotcha.
And it had got pretty far down the road. Heidi Boyce asked us to be the architect for it. And so I was pretty involved in it.
So
Was the idea?
would a good summary be maybe like a pop-up space?
Yeah, and I've just been thinking also, like, we have a large portion of our population today works from home that they didn't a while ago. And I kind of also just think like maybe there's opportunities on nice days for folks to come and work in the park, especially if they have kids, the kids can go play.
So outdoor seating.
outdoor, yeah, like,
Movable outdoor seating.
right, and meeting
Wi-Fi.
because needs throughout the day, Wi-Fi, I mean, if we have the library there, there's a potential to be able to extend the range of Wi-Fi in the adjacent area.
Well, it was funny because when it was first brought up to me, I thought it was nuts. But as I got into it more, the idea of having this raised kind of paved area where parents could kind of sit removed from the playground. And I mean, that was before COVID and before working at home, you know, and all those other ideas came in. But it sort of, after a while, it really resonated with me. Yeah, that would be a really pleasant place. You know, right now, the opportunity for parents to kind of sit somewhat removed from their kids and let them just play is really limited.
Have you guys ever been down, you know where like the Lark restaurant is?
Yes.
I love
Spaces.
that space. I was thinking if there would be a way to create something like that.
Have a gathering with my baby kids.
So much
It's
fun.
great there. It's a really good spot.
Yeah,
It would
it's
be
really
nice if we
nice.
could even, I know this, you know, I think about Station Circle and I think about weekends. And, you know, restaurants need the business, how nice it would be if you could almost close off like that one. I can't think of what, there is a little town around here that does this. On weekends, they close off,
Phoenixville,
where is it?
Phoenixville closes up their main drag.
Yeah, just, and it's so.
Media does that.
You can, you
Yeah.
know, drive your, bring your bike in and park, you can go have
I love
coffee.
that idea.
And you have, tables set up, you can get your, you can go to Thai and get that and come sit outside and eat with your family.
Well, that-
You know, your own drive, like the food and beverage. Yeah.
Yeah,
And it's bringing-
I love that.
it's
They
bringing
discussed
down-
that,
The downtown businesses, more business.
those are ideas that were brought up at the town charrette.
Yeah. They are
Fair.
represented in two different verticals.
It's like,
Yeah, just a way, but I guess I think more about the Narberth businesses and what we can do to support and build around that so that people come into it and see it as a destination to enjoy a day and be able to, you know, buy stuff.
It might, I mean, we
I love that.
definitely to show those alternatives.
yeah, and those towns have something we don't.
Like,
Which is
we'll
smart.
take a little bit.
Right. Well, and that's also, I've seen a lot of, well, not to bring up like public comments, but there are a lot of public comments on like Narberth Community Network about how people used to come into Narberth to go shopping and just walk around, and now they don't want to because of the parking and because it's so congested. Like, it'd be awesome to shut down the main drag.
We should invite.
I think if I've done a lot of, I've done a lot of historical research recently, and I think you go back, I've seen those comments, the nineties, the eighties, all the way down to the fifties. It's the same, we have more parking downtown
Yeah.
than we've ever had in the history of Narberth.
But people complain.
The comments are the same.
Oh.
So I think that.
All right. Well, I didn't know.
It's not the parking, just compare it to where our offices and ours have. And all the businesses they did, only people come into ours and for us and the people who go to others. And
Yeah.
so
yes.
the comparison start,
Michael,
and the idea that Narberth is not
in the fifties,
so
so.
working on its
But
public space,
You represent
it's also
the-
working on its business.
right, and half of Narberth town buildings today have zero.
Re-envisioning
Really,
that.
because I gotta tell you, everyone on Elmwood.
Where did you get that data? The US Census Bureau, I've checked it over the course of a decade to make sure that it wasn't aberrations that I'm seeing. The data is very clear for us.
But that's residents, not people coming in that need to use a vehicle to come
So
in.
We use them as well, and best practice is more and more being able to regulate that via.
It's the, I think it's the draw too.
That's the draw.
Your meters help you manage that, like, in terms of if you look at municipal best practices for downtowns. Active management of your downtown spaces is your general best practice. Or creating spaces that people want to be in and go to. And I think we have an opportunity.
It might just be that you.
Guys, I want to tell you, it's 8:46.
So I just do want to close up. We lost our PowerPoint because we can't share. But I do want to just say, in terms of next steps, we have our public meeting coming up on, the 29th, right?
29th.
And then we'll meet at the committee on July 10th. You will get Rebecca any comments you have on the flyer or the survey by 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock
On Thursday.
on Thursday, and she'll turn those around to us, and we'll get you revised versions of both by Friday. We'll coordinate with Rebecca and Alan on what you need for Narberth Day in terms of support or.
Well, I just emailed Alan too, once we finalize the flyer, how many I want to also be able to walk around South Side and hand them out, but, just for the day of, I know there's a few booths where they wouldn't mind it, and the one with the like poster board, so people can just.
Will we have this on a big board, the flyer?
Yeah, we can do that on a big board. So
For
that's,
our birthday?
yeah,
Because that would be really great.
so yeah, we can definitely do something.
It's really big.
Partners, do you need funding partners?
Partners could be both sports teams, it could be funding partners. So your partners are gonna be the people that are gonna team with you to go after funding, but it might also be your funding partners, right? So think about it as both. They'll support you in acquiring the funding as well as the actual funding agencies themselves.
And then goals, do you have shared community vision up there?
Shared
Community vision.
Okay, we'll add that. I did want to just, on the activating different times of the day, I think you guys as a committee should think about that, because your policy is dawn to dusk, right, in your parks,
Except for the basketball courts.
except for the basketball courts.
That's
Um,
safer.
When you look at a park like Narberth Park, it would be, if certain things that kind of came up on the walk that didn't quite make it on the wall tonight, I'm sure they'll make them on the wall in the public meeting. Perimeter walking trail, that's
Oh,
the
yeah.
biggest activity in the state right now.
There's a lot of.
It's really nice if that pushes the daylight hours, like you can get out in winter in the morning or in the evening to do your run.
General.
So kind of thinking about how the use and times of parks might need to evolve to really meet the community's needs. And is that dawn to dusk really a requirement that the community uses? So just kind of think about that a little bit.
All right, we're going to.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for coming here tonight. Thank you for your input. We're turning, it's 8:49.